third step, deal with crisis, deadlines, and offenses. I'm going to show you how. This is step number 3 out of 7, answering the question, how to turn a negative experience into a positive outcome. Get ready. This is crucial on your way to be able to look at anything in life that happens that is negative and turn it into a positive outcome. So I'm Doug Andrew, and I've helped many families and businesses teach these concepts to their children, grandchildren, employees. I'm passionate about helping people understand how to have a brighter future. I've been very blessed in my life with my wife of more than 48 years to be able to teach not only families this, but we volunteer at many youth detention centers, crisis centers. I'm on a board for teenage suicide prevention. My wife has helped many children at the Christmas box. And this is something that we face all the time, are people, ourselves included, that have negative experiences, setbacks in life. And I'm going to show you step number 3 on how to overcome and actually transform that negative experience into a positive outcome. Here we go. So if you're not aware, I have a 20-page document that I call the Negative Experience Transformer. And at the end of this episode, I'll show you how you can get a copy of this for free, and also a copy of my book, Entitlement, Abolition, that teaches this concept. So stay with me here. But the third step in this process, because we've talked about doing a gratitude assessment in step number 1. Step number 2 is gaining the proper perspective. Keep the big picture in mind and realize that this is just a small drop in this bucket we call life. So this next step is where you begin to realize how to deal with crisis, deadlines, offenses, or insults in life. We all experience those. I remember learning about this in this particular way several years ago up in La Conner, Washington, at George Pransky's office. Now, George Pransky has written several books. Probably his most famous one is The Relationship Factor. As he was talking to a group of us up there, because I was checking out his place to be able to refer clients to and so forth, he was talking about the emotions that we all feel when we experience crises in life, okay? And so, you get anxious, you get upset, sometimes you get retaliatory, angry. And so these are normal emotions when we have a crisis happen. And then he says, what about when there's a looming deadline? Yeah, same thing. You get anxious, you get upset, sometimes you get angry, irritable. And he says those are natural emotions because of these deadlines. Also, when you get insulted or offended, how do you feel? Golly, the same way. Upset, angry, retaliatory. And he goes, these are true emotions. He says, now, we actually have the power within us to be able to change the way that we act or react, because it's all up here. Now, he's a world-renowned psychiatrist and psychologist, and he says you can instantly change. In other words, I think there's a German saying that says you can choose to be upset, but you're not obligated to be when things happen in life. As he began to write these 3 experiences up on the board, it wasn't quite in this order, but I rearranged it for this purpose. Crises, okay? So we have a crisis in life, and then we have a deadline, or we have insults or offenses. And I arranged it in that order, and he says, so how is the best way to deal with that or to change your mind instantly? Now, when I say change your mind, what does that mean? Oftentimes, I tell this story. Years ago, I was with my brother, and we had like 40 minutes to hurry and grab a hamburger, shake some fries or whatever. So I picked him up at his office, and we got in the car, and I got in this left-hand turning lane. I knew this intersection. I had been in that intersection almost every morning when I was going to college. And I knew that when the light turned green, to let the left-hand turn people go through, that if it sensed motion, it would let several cars, maybe 15, 16, 17 cars go through the intersection. And so we were about the 6th car back, and the light turns green, and guess what? the lead car's not paying attention. And I think, oh no, and then the light turns immediately yellow. Has that ever happened to you? Because it's not detecting motion. And so this is unfolding in front of me. It's a time crunch for me. And I turned to my brother and I said, some dumb idiot in the lead car's not paying attention, and now we're going to have to... And all of a sudden the lead car is the only one that wakes up and gets through, of course. But it comes into full view. It's a cream-colored Chevrolet Monte Carlo with a distinguished gray-haired gentleman sitting in it. And I turned to my brother and I said, and it's Dad. It was our dad. He's one of the most gentle men. He would never intentionally try to bug somebody. And I instantly went to, I wonder what's on his mind. Let's see if we can catch up and take him to lunch. What was it that changed my mind instantly to taking this idiot to lunch? Okay, it was my perspective. It's like when we were raising our children and my wife would be giving, the children a riot act. You go to school one more day without making your bed and hanging up your clothes and tidying your room. I'm going to march down to that junior high, and all of a sudden the phone would ring. And she'd go over and answer the phone, and it would be one of the neighbors. She'd say, hello? Oh, fine. And the kids would go, that's not the woman she was a second ago. Yeah. See, we can instantly change our mind on how we act or react. And that's all George Pransky was teaching us. So all of a sudden I got this huge epiphany. Now, before I share this, if this is intriguing you or you know somebody that would benefit from this, be sure and share, post a comment, click like, but subscribe to this channel and click the little bell so you'll be notified every time I post a new episode, which I do almost on a daily basis. And stay with me to the end because I want to gift you a copy of my book, Entitlement, Abolition, absolutely free. When George Pransky was talking about the emotions that we all feel when we have a crisis in life, or we have a looming deadline, or somebody offends us, insults us, all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, what's the best way to deal with a crisis? Usually when I have a crisis, I get fearful. And if I have fear, that emotion cannot occupy the human heart simultaneously with faith. See, I've realized and found out in my life, if I exercise faith in a brighter future, now faith without works is dead, but you have to have faith in a brighter future that things will work out, okay? That you do everything you can do and a higher power will make up the difference. You handle crisis with faith. And that dispels the fear. What about deadlines? Yeah, you have these looming deadlines. I remember my manuscript for my third book, which became a New York Times, Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller. The advance for that book was $1 million. The manuscript was due the day after Labor Day. Now, I could either choose to be anxious and frantic over the Labor Day weekend, or else I could look towards the deadline as a lifeline. A lifeline. See, Zig Ziglar, one of my favorite motivational speakers, used to talk about, I don't have colds, I have occasional warms. My temperature goes up, I get a fever. I don't have colds, I have warms. Okay, I don't talk about the weekend, I talk about the strong end. Okay, he would use that type just to set himself up. And so I would change my mind. Instead of a deadline, I would go, ooh, I can't wait till that date, that lifeline, because then my book will hopefully be launched and it'll become a New York Times, Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller. And I'd be thinking about all the positive things that would happen at that lifeline, not deadline. It makes all the difference in the world. It's all up here. So how do you handle a deadline or look at a lifeline? With hope. You are hoping for the best. So we've got faith, we have hope. When you have hope for a brighter future, you can handle those deadlines in life and turn them into lifelines because you're hoping for the best outcome. If you've read in the good book, what comes after faith, hope? Charity, okay, or love. And it fit perfectly. I got that epiphany that day. I turned to my wife and I said, the way you deal with crisis, deadlines, offenses is with faith, hope, and charity. See, when somebody offends you, you just say, oh, bless their heart. If they really knew what I'd been going through or why I did this and that, they would have never, but they don't know that. They don't have my perspective of this. So I forgive them. In fact, most of the time, people don't really mean to offend. We choose to take offense. I remember going to a woman's funeral, and her program said she was never offended because she never took offense. How simple is that? It's like Mark Twain's quote, "Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet spreads upon the hill that crushed it." Yeah, just, you know what? Because most of the time people don't mean to offend. We choose to take offense and it's hurting you, not them. In the small percentage of time when somebody does mean to offend you, if you want to get back at them, don't get upset. Don't take offense. It'll drive them crazy, okay? Just be charitable. So the way that we deal with crisis, deadlines, and insults is with faith, hope, and charity. It's been in the good book for millennia. I missed it, but I connected the dots that day in Washington State. So if you would like all 7 steps, I would really admonish you to watch the other episodes, but you can get the 20-page document, The Negative Experience Transformer, with all the explanations in here and also the tools. But I want to gift you a copy of this book, Entitlement Abolition. You simply go to entitlementabolitionbook.com and you contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling, or click on the link below, and I'll cover the rest of that cost and I'll fire out a copy to you. There are options there if you like to listen and learn or watch and learn. I have an 18-hour masterclass talking about this book, and it goes very deep into concepts like this negative experience transformer.